Welcome to Legacy Protected, the podcast by the Soto Law Group, dedicated to empowering Southern California families and business owners through essential insights on the estate planning, probate, trust, and probate litigation. In each episode, we will demystify the complex legal landscape that surrounds asset protection, inheritance preservation, and care for the vulnerable family members. Today, we are meeting with Shanda Beach of Beach Law Firm. She's a business litigator with a ton of experience and lots of war stories. Shanda, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about you and your background, and then we can get into some of the nitty-gritty that goes on in law practice and business litigation, mixing it, of course, with probate and trust litigation.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me today.
My pleasure.
Appreciate it. So I'm from Indiana originally, and I went to law school there. And in 1996, I moved out here to California and started practicing law in business litigation with the large international law firm, and got a ton of great experience over about a decade. And then in 2004, started my own business litigation boutique here in Newport.
Can you tell us a little bit about the pros and cons of settling a case, and when is a good time to actually settle a case? I know a lot of times clients just want to settle and be done with it, but there's a process, right?
There's usually a process. I mean, sometimes the answer is as soon as possible, and that is if you have a very weak case, legally or factually. You really don't know that until you speak to an attorney and get some analysis and look at the evidence and look at your witnesses. So sometimes settling as soon as possible is going to benefit you emotionally, it's going to benefit you financially. But sometimes if you have a decent case, you have good legal arguments, it takes a while. In litigation, sometimes it'll take about 6 months of discovery before both sides want to stop the bleeding and come to the settlement table. And honestly, it does depend on the weakness or the strength of the case and the parties involved, the motivation behind the clients, even if they're businesses. People are people. And some people want an apology, which is rare. The other side rarely gives an apology in business litigation. But some of this is very personal, even though it's under the guise of logical business cost-benefit analysis. That does play a role, but a lot of it's personal. So that will determine how long it takes to get the parties to the settlement table, if at all.
I know people hear that terminology. Do you want to expand a little bit? When you say discovery, elaborate, and what does that include?
So discovery, it's usually two-pronged. There's written discovery, which means we can ask you in what we call interrogatories, which are just questions. We can ask you to answer questions under oath. We can ask you to produce documents, again, under oath, or to admit certain facts. That's the written part. There's a timeline for that. It takes several months to get that all together. And we can also do depositions, which is kind of the oral part of this. You just get in front of a court reporter, you give your testimony under oath as if you were in a court of law. And then that is used by the parties, again, to determine your legal strengths and weaknesses, how your witnesses will stack up against each other. Facts that you didn't know existed often come out in depositions. And that is the process that you undertake before you get to trial preparation. It's part of trial preparation.
How long does that usually last?
That can last, I think a minimum, I'm going to say, of course, this depends on the complexity of the case. So if you have a basic case, discovery can be 3 to 6 months minimum, typically.
Lots of depositions can occur during that period of time as well.
Yes, and if your case is more complex, or you have more depositions, and you have people's schedules, or the court has a few motions scheduled in between, it can take a year or two to get through discovery.